Ignite to Impact.
Hi, you're listening to Ignite to Impact, a podcast that talks about life, leadership, and legacy. I'm Dr. Geneva, and I'm your host, and I am just excited to be with you as we learn about, hear about stories that transform us, that inspire us to go to the next level, to learn about how we can use our influence to positively impact our life and the lives of others. In studio with me today, I am just delighted to bring to you someone I think you'll really learn an awful lot from. My guest today, Charmaine Brown, president and founder of Connexions Consulting, is a recognized corporate leader with 20 plus years of experience in strategic planning, HR, diversity, talent management, inclusion, philanthropy, all those kinds of things that you just have to know about to take your leadership and influence to the next level. She's with me today, and we're going to have a great conversation about planning, about inclusion, about diversity, about leadership, but also about what she sees for women in the future. You know, we're coming on 2020, the year 2020, and so everybody's talking about vision and having 2020 vision about women and their leadership role. So that's what we're going to talk about. And listen, if you like what you hear, and I know you will, don't forget to subscribe to my podcast, Ignite to Impact, and give me a 5-star rating. Not a 2, not a 3, but a 5 if you love it. How you doing, Charmaine?
Doing great.
I'm so glad to have you here, and congratulations on a lot of things, but particularly on your recent election as president of NAWBO.
Yes.
And so what is NAWBO?
So NAWBO is actually the National Association of Women Business Owners. It's a national organization that is focused on building wealth for women-owned businesses. It's about creating opportunities, and we play a huge advocacy role in legislation for women-owned businesses that most people may not even know. There's this legislation called HR 5050, which NAWBO was instrumental. Now, back some years ago, it was not, women were not allowed to get funding, loans for their businesses without a signature from a man.
Really?
And so,
now
yes.
As I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay.
I know, right?
Yeah. What?
And I believe it's only been the past 30 to 40 years that HR 5050 has gone into effect. And NAWBO was very instrumental in working with the government to ensure that this law got enacted so that women could seek funding for their businesses without the signature of a man.
And NAWBO was instrumental in changing that legislation.
One of the things that our organization is really focused on at the national level is advocacy on behalf of women-owned businesses across the country. And what I love about this organization is that any type of women-owned business can be a member of NAWBO. You don't have to be necessarily certified, but you have to have a business.
Okay.
And we here in the Detroit area are really focused on connecting, learning, and growing with our members. So ensuring that they have the opportunity to connect with opportunity, to learn things that will help to support the growth of their organization. And ultimately, we all want to grow. We all want to make more money. And what we do know about women is that we want to, not only do we want to increase our income, but we want to make an impact in the community. And so that's what NAWBO and NAWBO Greater Detroit, the chapter, is all about.
So now, Charmaine, so this organization, the national organization created major change by using its influence to reverse a law that required women to have a male signature in order to get money. What kind of influence do you see the Greater Detroit chapter doing and playing, and how do you play a role in that?
So what's interesting is all of the chapters across the country have an advocacy role within their state or within their local markets, and we are actually planning to sit down with all the representatives here in the state of Michigan, including the governor, to really understand the impact that some of the legislation has on our ability for women-owned businesses to grow, to gain access to capital, to create opportunities to scale their business in whatever way their strategies allow for. So we're in the planning stages right now in terms of really understanding how NAWBO can play an influential role in ensuring that women-owned businesses here in the state of Michigan can grow. One of the things, I had the opportunity to go to D.C. Week before last, and it was wonderful. It was a great time for me to meet other incoming presidents. But speaking of the president, we had the opportunity to go to the White House and also to Capitol Hill for what we call our Advocacy Day.
Okay.
Advocacy Day is actually happens on the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote. And so June 4th, 1909, I think was the date. And so, us NAWBO women stormed Capitol Hill in the White House in purple because we are a bipartisan organization. Okay. And so, the combination of red and blue is purple. So we had
whether you're Democrat or Republican, what you have in common is advocacy for women.
Exactly. And so, and as a staunch Democrat, I definitely have to manage both, right? So I'm going
to stop you right there because I understand about the advocacy, et cetera, but you piqued my interest right there. So how do you manage both? Being a staunch Democrat and leading an organization that is nonpartisan,
right?
Is purple.
Yes.
How do you manage that?
Well, I have been training to manage that for a very long time. In my role as a Chief Diversity Officer for many years, I have my own personal opinions about issues that affect and impact people of color and women and all the other groups of difference, right? And I say that in air quotes. And so I have had to really check my own values and practice the concept of listening, listening to understand without reacting. And so that skill that I've built over the past several years, operating in this role as a driver of change, has helped me in this role, being the president of NAWBO Greater Detroit chapter, as it relates to the advocacy piece, right? So I do a lot of listening and really checking myself to not judge, but to understand and listen and learn before I respond. And again, I think I've had to leverage that skill for many years. You think about the challenges within organizations around this concept of diversity. As much as an organization may have a very strong strategy around things like talent, culture, marketplace, people are people. And people walk into organizations with their own experiences, their own set of values, their own perspectives about things that kind of fall into the bucket of diversity. And as someone who is leading that work, I have to manage my own perspective and my own opinions, so that I am seen as a champion of that supports everybody, right?
Yes.
And so that has really helped me, I think, with the role with NAWBO as it relates to the purple advocacy piece.
I love it. Those tips of the listening, listening to understand, as well as the self-awareness, it seems that you have, that in fact you want to be very intentional about how you're perceived.
Very much so.
Yeah. So, and you also mentioned, Charmaine, that you've been in training.
Yeah.
So did this start in your childhood? Did you know when you were growing up that you were going to be this leader who listens and strives to understand?
When, it's always when you look back.
Yes.
I had a cousin of mine who owned a beverage, they called them beverage stores back in the day, in a popular part of town in Cleveland. And she hired me under the table.
Okay.
And as she tells the story, I ran that beverage store. I might have been 13 or 14 years old. And she would actually leave me and without any concern that I could handle and manage. And so when I look back, I've always kind of played a leadership role. Now, I didn't realize my passion for diversity and inclusion until I went to college. I attended Michigan State University, and I was a resident assistant. And as a resident assistant, you are responsible for putting on programs and things like that. And most of my programs were around race relations.
Oh, okay.
Again, looking back. So I got out into the work world, and my desire was to become an occupational therapist. So I majored in kinesiology, the study of movement, and had planned to go to grad school and decided I needed a break. So I went to work for a therapy company. They kept me in the office, and that's where I realized I really was very business oriented, as much as I fought against it. Both my parents were in corporate America. My mom worked for Ernst & Young, well, it was Ernst & Ernst, Ernst & Winnie, E&Y, and my dad worked for KeyBank. So they were corporate folks. I saw them put on the suits and ties and dresses and pantyhose, which,
yeah, I know about them pantyhose, yes.
And I didn't want any parts of that. And so that's what kind of interested me in going into the healthcare field. But long story short, I found that I was much more business focused and had a desire and an interest in helping people in some way. So I think that my experiences have kind of all led me to this point, but it wasn't necessarily planful.
Yes, okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes, and so, seeing mom and dad clearly as role models in the corporate space, as well as what you did as a 14-year-old running a business. It seems that it was kind of laid out for you, as you say, though not intentional, but laid out for you. What are some of the greatest lessons you've learned, leadership lessons you've learned in your journey?
My parents instilled in me that it was critical for you to learn as much as you can from every experience, that it didn't matter what was on your job description, that, take on those assignments that stretch you, because in the end, you're the one walking away with those experiences that have built compounds, right? Mm-hmm. So you learn and grow based on the experiences. And so I have not turned down any opportunities to grow in the roles that I had been in. Mm-hmm. And quite truthfully, because I was willing to take on assignments, it also created this visibility for me with leadership. And so as I look back on it, I don't know if there was a real formula other than the fact that I had this openness and willingness and expressed that to leaders and didn't shy away from it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But at the same time, they also saw things in me. And because I was willing to step up to the plate, they were willing to create these opportunities or put me in positions of opportunity. Okay. And so, I have a tendency to build very strong relationships with my leaders. Mm-hmm. I think it's just part of who I am. Mm-hmm. Someone said to me that you just have this law of attraction, like people just are gravitated to you. And I never thought about it in the sense that it could be it was an asset, but that it was just who I was. But I think that, in terms of helping others to figure out, what they need to do, there's this openness and this willingness that you need to have inside, but it also needs to be expressed externally. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But, again, as you talk about it's just who I am, that really is one of the core principles of leadership. Mm-hmm. That is that there's this self-awareness of self, mm-hmm. and you develop yourself and you lead based upon who you are.
Right.
And it seems as though and that also helps you find your groove, your right. passion, your meaning. And it seems like you're in the lane of your meaning, your purpose, your passion.
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought I was in my lane and in the groove of my passion when I worked inside of corporate America. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I was a consummate corporate cheerleader. Mm-hmm. I loved supporting the organizations that I work for out in the community, and I loved the opportunity to really help everybody in the organization to feel like they were a part of the success. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until I left corporate America, I went through about a year of identity challenge, crisis, right? Okay. When you've worked for an organization for so many years, your name is associated. Oh, do you work at such and such? Well, do you know Charmaine Brown, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. So my name, my brand, people knew who I was because I was associated with this organization. And this organization, I leveraged the opportunity to build the Charmaine Brown brand too. Okay. Didn't realize that's what I was doing, mm-hmm, but mm-hmm. that's what happened. But when I got out of corporate America and moved to a brand new state, mm-hmm. where I didn't have that same brand recognition, and I also wasn't associated with an organization, it was tough. Mm-hmm. Because now, who was Charmaine Brown, mm-hmm. right?
And so what did you do?
Oh, gosh.
Because I think that's so interesting. You were at one place, mm-hmm. one geography, building your brand. Folk knew you, developed your path as a corporate leader specializing mm-hmm. in inclusion, diversity, mm-hmm. human resources, philanthropy. And then you moved to a completely new geography where no one knew your name.
Right.
One of those situations.
Right.
That transition is so interesting. And then on top of that, Charmaine, in this new geography where no one, when you first got here, knew your name, 3 years later, you've established a successful company, mm-hmm. your business is booming, and you've just been elected president of a very influential organization. How did you do it?
Well, the first year, admittedly, I took some time. It would have been one thing if I had relocated and moved into a role within an organization. I think that transition would have been much easier for me, right? Because you have the support of an organization and people around, and there's the influences of being new within an organization, right? However, I made a decision to sit back for a moment and help to transition my family. At the time, my daughter was 8 years old. So as you can imagine, me leaving my career, my community, my family, I'm a big girl, I could figure it out. But my daughter was 8.
Yes. And so you had to take the family,
right,
and your child.
And I chose to do that, which again was not written in the the plan for Charmaine.
Okay.
And so I took a break. I took a breath.
Okay.
And I am appreciative of that time. But what it also did for me was it created more confusion. Okay, so I have this opportunity to kind of rebuild what my what Life 2.0 is supposed to look like.
Okay.
And I really had a lot of conflict within myself, a lot of self-doubt, and was lacking confidence and all the nasty things that we tell ourselves because now I'm not associated with what I've always been associated with. And I had such an amazing group of cheerleaders, including my husband, who's number one, and mentors and supporters who said, you know what, you got this. Why don't you start your business? You've already been coaching and in consulting even when you were inside of an organization. So get your business set up. Just start taking steps towards. So admittedly, over the year and a half, I had Connexions Consulting. I was working. I had projects, but my heart wasn't fully in it. And I look back now and realize I was still working on that confidence. As now an independent, a solopreneur, an entrepreneur. Everything is now my responsibility.
Right.
And are people really going to... do I have the same credibility, skills, and expertise that kind of gets wrapped into, she works for this organization. Now it's Connexions Consulting. So I spent a lot of time kind of struggling with that, but on the outside, you probably wouldn't have known it. And
so when did you have your breakthrough?
My breakthrough came from working in the health and wellness industry in network marketing.
Okay.
I decided to just jump in, and I wanted to get more healthy myself. And I thought if I could help others, great. What I found was that it takes a lot of confidence and the art of hearing no. Really helps to build strength.
Yes.
And I learned more about myself in that experience than I did in my whole 27 years of corporate life. And it helped me to build the confidence to do the work that I'm doing today. And so I rolled my sleeves up and said, okay, what am I going to do with Connexions Consulting? How am I really going to... how is this really going to be my business, you know? And how am I really going to own this? And once I started owning it and drilling into getting real specific about what I wanted to do, not what I used to do when I worked on the inside, right? Because I did compliance work, I did strategy and implementation and philanthropy. Now I'm very clear about what it is Connexions Consulting does. And that has helped tremendously.
My goodness.
Yeah.
So the sitting back, taking a pause, the reflection, very important step, very important. And then you seem to have taken pieces, chunks as you reflected. But I'm hearing that the biggest thing, perhaps, in your transition, and it was a major transition, going
huge.
from a corporate leader to a solopreneur, was this whole process that you went through to find out about yourself.
Exactly.
And what you really wanted, and then finding the courage and the guts and all that it takes to implement that new dream.
Right.
It seems though
that's it.
was a big thing, and you talked about confidence, and whew, it was just amazing transition. So Charmaine, tell me, how does this apply to your new role as president of this major influential group? You know, what's your vision? How do you see your influence? I know it's 1,000 things I want to ask you, but
I know.
you know, tell me this. What does your first 100 days as president of Greater Detroit NAWBO look like?
That is an excellent question. The first 100 days is taking we're really going to clear the slate and operate as if we are developing a brand new organization. I think that we have done some incredible work and created some spaces and opportunities and environments for women-owned businesses to connect, learn, and grow through our events. NAWBO is a membership-based organization, and one of the values that our members get out of being a member is the ability to connect with one another, to grow with one another, and learn how to build and scale their organizations. And that can't be done just through events. That has to be done with intentional programming. And so the next 100 days is focused on strategy building around engaging our members in programming that's going to help them develop and grow in the ways that they want to grow. The second piece of that is ensuring that we get very clear on what our one specific advocacy role in this state will be, so that we can help to champion some of that change at the legislative level. And then thirdly, I think NAWBO in some ways is still a well-kept secret. That there's not enough awareness of who NAWBO is and what it can provide to this community. We talk about being a strong group of sisters. And there is some value in that. I remember when I first came on board, I was like, stop talking about sisterhood. We can't attract, our supporters, our sponsors in that way. We have to have more of a stronger business case, That's that corporate in me.
Right.
However, I think that is one of the unique values of this organization that maybe some others don't have, in addition to the opportunity for organizations like some of our sponsors to be able to achieve some of their own organizational goals while partnering and supporting women-owned businesses in their growth. That is our unique proposition. That is where we truly differentiate ourselves. And I say that because we've been talking to some of our members who are involved with other organizations, and the one thing that they say is they feel like they, because of the way we bring them in, the way that our board and our members engage with new people walking into the room, they feel special. They automatically feel like there is a connection, a bond, and a sisterhood. And those relationships are important. Yes. Why? Because I've had the opportunity to connect with some of my NAWBO sisters, and now I have business opportunities.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's really what it's all about. So for the next 100 days, we're really reshaping, rescaling, so that we can really support the growth of our members.
So making things happen for women business owners.
Yes.
That's what you're focused on. That action, the first 100 days is about building that strategy, figuring out that advocacy game plan, making sure that the unique value proposition of NAWBO is clear and helping women business owners. That's a big task, but I know you are, if anybody can do it. So as we're winding down, Charmaine, tell me what the next chapter of the Charmaine Brown novel looks like.
Driving more income and creating more impact.
All right. Income and impact. Ooh, what a combination. Bring it to me. And you've given us some really great insight about how you do that, because you, in fact, have done it.
Yeah.
You've made that transition from a corporate leader to a solopreneur on the foundation of great inclusion, diversity, understanding what it is, working with nonprofits, being a leader. You've shared with us the technique that you use to listen, to strive for understanding and awareness, to be aware, self-aware of how you're perceived as a leader. Such important things. And I love this whole idea of law of attraction, and as you know about yourself and how you can pull folk to you and connect and understand relationships.
Yeah.
Yes, what a leader.
It took someone else to make that observation for me, you know. Okay.
Oftentimes that's what it is for people to, because that's the other thing I think strategy that you shared with us, and that is to develop and keep your a group of cheerleaders.
Absolutely. It is essential.
Yes. Well,
essential.
Charmaine Brown, we wish you the best. Corporate leader, great solopreneur, leader of the National Association of Women Business Owners at the local and national level. We're just so thrilled and delighted to have you here on Ignite to Impact and sharing with us how you unleash your influence to make positive change.
Thank you
wonderful. For being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
I just love you.
Well, thank you. We love you too. And so if you enjoyed this conversation, and I know you did, because this sister, this leader, really shared some great insights with us, some tips about listening and understanding and all those things we know about leaders and how they have to know themselves. And her insight into vision and what she has going on day to day has just been inspiring. So if you like what you heard, subscribe to Ignite to Impact and drop me a 5-star rating. Yes, 5-star, not 2 or 3, but 5-star rating. This is Dr. Geneva signing off. Love you and look forward to our next conversation when we learn more about influence and impact.
Ignite to Impact.